If you lose consciousness before you get the mask on yourself, then everybody's screwed, right? So get up. And same thing, like if you want to have energy to play with your kids and wrestle with your kids when they're teenagers and be able to play soccer or baseball or whatever it is, pickleball, play some pickleball with your kids as they get older. You want to have the energy for that. And not only that, but you're also setting the example for your kids.
Welcome to the Skilled Dad podcast. This is the podcast for dads of all seasons to learn the things that they can do and engage so that they can go and equip the next generation for success. Here we sit down with everyday dads just like you to learn from their story, get inspired, and then start getting after it. So we invite you to join in, see what you can take away from this story, and apply to your life on your journey to becoming the Skilled Dad. Hey guys, welcome to the Skilled Dad podcast. My name is Zach Reeser. I'm your host, and I'm glad you're here. I hope that 2024 continues to rock on for you. We are finishing up Q1 and already going into Q2. And I cannot believe how quickly the year is going. And it's been a fun one so far. And for tonight or today, whenever you're listening, I always say tonight, Jeff. It's like, we're recording. When they listen to it, could be the morning. So guys, gals, whenever you're listening to this, you're going to hear the lovely voices of my guest today and myself here. And today I've got a gentleman that we spoke a couple of weeks ago, had a really nice conversation. It's always set for like 15 minutes and we go for like 45. And now I feel like I already have gotten to know you. So Mr. Jeff Spitzer, thanks for coming on the Skilled Dad podcast with me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zach.
We've already been catching up again a little bit beforehand. And that's one of the things I just love about doing this podcast. You meet so many awesome dads, awesome men, parents, everything. And Jeff is no exception to that. And a little bit about Jeff. He's a health coach, also with a varied background of a lot of dad experience, which we're going to get into tonight. And father of 5, but also a bonus dad. And so for many of those that have listened to the bonus dad series in the past, you've got, is it 3 of your own and then 2 stepkids, or
Flip that. 2
flip
of my
that?
own and 3 on my wife's side. Yep.
I was trying to bat 1,000 today, but we'll just get that one out of the way quickly. So,
Absolutely.
2 of your own and then 3. Did I mess
She's
it up
got
again?
3.
Okay, there we go. All
Yeah,
right.
no, you got it.
Um, and so, Jeff had reached out to me and we had a great conversation, like I said, and I just really enjoyed hearing his story and some of the takeaways. And you've got experiences, like you're that chapter ahead of me.
Mhm.
And so learning some of the things that you've walked into and that you've experienced, um, I think is going to help equip me. And for those of you with younger kids at home, here's somebody with some experience that we can learn from and listen to and hear their story. And then if and when we're facing a similar experience, hey, we can remember this conversation. So Jeff,
Yeah,
once again, thank you.
I think I'm more than a chapter ahead of you. I think I'm probably 3 or 4 chapters ahead of you because our youngest is now 21. So
Okay. Yeah. You're a couple chapters ahead, but
yeah, yeah,
that's okay. Spoiler alert. This works out. But no, Jeff, if you wouldn't mind, I'll hand it over to you. Tell us about yourself, some of your background, and we'll just take the conversation from there.
Oh boy, where would I start? So you mentioned I'm
Everyone's
a health
favorite
coach.
question. Yeah.
My health coaching, I'll just address that real quickly.
Yeah.
Is I work with parents, and thing about parents is that always taking care of other people, right? They
Mhm.
they feel like they don't have time for themselves. And so that's the biggest thing I help them with because I've been there. I'm still there in a lot of ways, with between 2 kids of my own that, after divorce, I was a primary caregiver. So I was a single dad for
Mm.
a lot of years, about 10 years before I met my wife and my now wife. And, then introduced the whole step parenting aspect of it because she had 3 of her own. That's a whole different story. Like how you parent your kids and then walking the fine line that is step parenting is it was not easy, but we figured it out and I'm very glad we did.
Yeah. How old were the kiddos when you stepped in and now you're super stepdad? I like to use the term bonus dad. I have a bonus dad myself.
Yep.
But how old were they
Bonus dad.
when you
I
stepped
like
in?
that. So I met my wife Liz in 2007, and my son would have been 16, and my daughter was 12, almost
Okay.
13. I think she's turning 13 about a month later.
Wow.
And and then hers were, geez, her youngest was 3. I think they were 3, 5, and 7 at the time. So that was my biggest hurdle. I was like, whoa, do I really want to get serious? Like I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now my youngest is almost 13. They're pretty independent at this point.
Right.
Do I want to get involved with this woman with these young kids and essentially start all over? And she was totally worth it. And as for her kids. So yeah, it
Yeah.
was an easy choice in the long run.
So the 3-year-old is now the 21-year-old.
Yes. Yeah. She'll be 21 in another week and a half.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And at 3 and 5, well, 7 too. I mean, those are all formative years. So
Mhm.
you kind of stepped into the formative time. You went, like you said, you're almost out of the nest, and then you kind of start over,
Yeah.
which has probably kept you on your toes, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What
It's
so how was that with the 3, 5, and 7? I mean, with the stepping at that time, I would imagine like your role was pretty important for them.
But their dad was still in the picture, so I wasn't
Yeah.
replacing their father.
Right.
Uh, he lived in another state at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and so they definitely missed their dad, and to have a male presence in their life, I think, was really good for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then once their dad moved back here to Oregon, and he was a regular part of their lives again, I never tried to replace him. I think that was important because he's in their lives and he's still their
Mm-hmm.
dad. So I just tried to be an additional father here for
Mm-hmm.
them and, maybe fill in some of the gaps between, divorce is tough on kids because,
Yeah.
my wife, when I met her, she was only about a year out from her divorce and it was still an adjustment period. Kids, they're resilient, but it can take a little while. And that's a traumatic time. And so I came in at a time when, they met their dad, they needed somebody and I could really help fill that void. So
Yeah.
I mean, I adored them right off the bat. I probably got some fun stories about, getting to know each other with the kids. But it was fun. There were certainly challenges along the way, especially when we decided to move in together and blend the families. That was a whole thing.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I think that's a really good point about the dad replacement side of it. And I don't know. I can only speak from my experience. I have several friends that are similar boat. I was 10 when my parents divorced, but um, I don't know that. How do I say that? You can't replace the the father. Um, but that's I think why the phrase bonus dad is so prevalent or appropriate is because I was able to learn from 2 men who have 2 very different skill sets. And
Yes.
so some of those gaps that you're talking about filling, you have the opportunity to learn from both of them. So if anybody's listening and they're in that scenario, there's another episode in the back with my buddy Andrew, is the bonus dad diaries is what we called it. But that piece is really important, especially when dad is in the picture and
Mhm.
that it's not a replacement factor, but think of it as it's a bonus thing that they can pick up on multiple
Yeah.
um, skills and strengths. So that's good.
Yeah. And, as I mentioned, I stepped into the picture when their dad was still living in another state.
Hmm.
And, they definitely missed him. So having me around. And then, even with she was my girlfriend at the time, my wife, their mom, like with her son, like he didn't have a lot of male energy in his life because,
Hmm.
his dad was not living here. And so he had his mom and his sisters and his grandma and his aunt, and he
Hmm.
had a lot of female energy. And he really needed some of that male energy. So I would tease him, I would wrestle with them. And my wife at times thought I was being a little too rough at sometimes, and I was like, no, I got this. I know what I'm doing. And, later she told me, you were so right. I was trying to baby him. I was trying to protect him.
Mm,
And, what he really needed was somebody who would like roll around in the dirt and like,
yeah,
not just rustle his hair, but, challenge him a little bit. And he really grew into a fine young man.
yeah. No, that's awesome that you did that. I mean, uh, male affection and showing the boys like how to wrestle, and
Yeah.
there's a difference between the mom vibes and the dad vibes.
Mhm.
And that's key, man. That is key. There's so many books that talk about it. I mean, it's just you can see it. And so I've got three,
Mhm.
9, 6, and 2.5. And my youngest, my 2.5-year-old, is boy, girl, boy. He's a little warrior. And I mean,
Yeah.
he just yeah, he's the rough and tumble. And he'll come out and be like, "Do you want to wrestle?" Just
That's
I
right.
mean, he yearns for it. He yearns for it. So when you don't get that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I get what you're saying because I was in that boat for a little while, so I totally understand it. So that's awesome. And kudos to you. And
Let me
um,
give you a little tip there
yeah,
too. Well, you got two boys. Your oldest is 9, you said?
9. Yep.
So you probably got 5, 6 years maybe before he hits that age, but there's an age when the wrestling stops.
Mm,
And for me, that was when my son could beat me. So, my son, we would wrestle a lot. We would play, like indoor basketball. Like we put, the little tiny hoop you put on top of the door jam.
yeah.
And, it was like full contact basketball in the house sort of thing. And then once he hit about 15, he got stronger than me, or at least
Hmm.
as strong as me. And I'll never forget, we were roughhousing and it got heated, and he had pinned me on the kitchen floor, and I couldn't move. That was the last day that we ever wrestled. So it's like, "It's all right.
I
We're done."
dread that day. I do tell him, my oldest, I tell him, "Look, I'm gonna, like, whoop up on you now because there will come a day where you're gonna take me, and I gotta get my good shots in while I can."
Absolutely.
Um, but I do dread that day, and I'm in no hurry to get there because that's gotta be a shift. I mean, even from I mean, was it a shift for you? I mean, you're pinned down from your 15-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what are you thinking at that point?
Yeah.
Just so I can prepare myself. I have a few years, but, like, what goes
What
through your
was I
mind?
thinking on the floor? I was thinking, "Man, how what happened?"
Right. What am I
And
gonna
I
do now?
remember thinking as I was laying there with he's got my head pinned to the floor, I'm like, "We're never wrestling again."
I think I'm gonna, like, get into jujitsu or something with him so then we
Uh-huh.
can be sparring
Good idea.
partners, you know? It's like
Absolutely. Good
I can
idea.
selfishly keep the wrestling going, but, I'd love to go back to, if you're open to it, the topic of being the single parent.
Sure.
And you said for 10 years?
Yeah, it was about 10 years. My divorce and meeting my now wife in 2007.
Wow. I mean, it's more typical for the moms to get the kids,
Mhm.
usually. Um, so, like, would you share some about that experience? 10 years raising the kiddos. I mean, what age would they have been then? Like 2 to 6, right?
So we split in end of 2000, like November 2000, or sorry, 96, when we split. Divorce finalized in 97, and actually we moved to Oregon. We grew up in, or I grew up in Northern California, Central
Mhm.
California, and that's where we lived at the time. And we were planning to move to Oregon. I'll try to spare you the long story, but even though we divorced, we decided that we were still going to move to Oregon because
Okay.
I made sure right off the bat that I got joint custody of the kids,
Mhm.
and so that if I decided not to move, that she couldn't,
Mhm.
take them away from me. And we were pretty amicable. We didn't it wasn't a nasty divorce. There were no lawyers involved. We agreed on everything, and we just filed it with a paralegal. And we agreed to joint custody. And shortly after we moved to Oregon. We moved at the same time, but at the different places,
Mhm.
and which was really good for the kids. We actually moved into the same apartment complex,
Okay.
and the kids can go back and forth between our places. And then, life sort of took her in some other directions,
Mhm.
and I became primary caregiver at that point. And, she had moved and she had moved into some places where she could have the kids, there like wasn't bedrooms for the kids.
Mhm.
And so it was very important to me that one, I'm in my kids' lives
Mhm.
and I wasn't like a every other weekend dad, and those who are listening that are every other weekend dads, I feel for you a bit because I realize how hard that can be to
Mhm.
not be able to have that time with your kids. And so I was never in that situation. So when the kids, I just really wanted them to be the stability for them.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
I made sure that if we had to move, we stayed in their school district so they didn't have to change schools. I went back to school at that time myself and I took, evening and weekend classes. And this is the late 90s. There weren't really online classes. There were some that were they called distance learning at the time.
Yeah.
And there some of the classes I needed weren't offered that way. And I would go to the teacher and say, "Hey, can I can I just take this class and just show up for tests or something?" Because
Mhm.
I told them my situation. And they're like, "Yeah, we're thinking about putting this class online anyway, so you could be a good test case." And so that worked out really well. So it was a rough several years while I was in school and
Mhm.
being a single dad. And, even though my ex had, moved and the kids couldn't stay overnights with her, they still saw her on a fairly regular basis. So she was always part of their lives. But it was just really important to me that I would be stability for them. And that's what I always tried to be.
Mhm. How old were you?
I was I was born in
Not trying to
1970.
like
So
date you here, but
yeah. No, it's fine. So I just turned 26 when we split. So I was 26 years old when we divorced and moved up to Oregon. And that was a while ago because I'm 53 now.
dude, you're a stud. I just want to tell you that. I mean,
Well,
you
man,
know,
I haven't even taken my shirt off yet, Zach, but thanks for noticing.
I mean, so you're late 20s, close to mid to late 20s,
Yeah.
and you got the two kids, and you are making these decisions and going to school at night, taking care of these kids as a single parent.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of discipline. And, you know, in late 20s, that's that's admirable. I think it's admirable at any time, but that's awesome, man. So if no one's
Oh,
told you that lately, let me be the one to say like, well done.
well,
That is,
thank you.
I think, a good for anybody that's in a boat, you know, like Jeff. Here's somebody that did a great job and
Thank you.
pushed through it, and so you can do it too.
I'll take you back a step further,
Let's do it.
actually, because actually becoming a dad might have saved me in some respect
Mm,
because I wasn't on a great road. I was 19 years old. I was not really serious about college. I was probably failing. I was going to community college at the time. I was, me and my girlfriend, my future ex-wife, we had a lot of party friends and we were getting into drugs. And, I wasn't on a good path. And
mhm.
when she got pregnant with my son, that was a big turning point. I remember at first I thought my life was over. When we found out that she was pregnant, I was like, "Oh my god, what am I gonna do?" I'll never forget. Like she comes bouncing out of the bathroom. She was happy. She's like, so happy. We were holding that early pregnancy test, and I just remember sitting on the edge of the bed and staring at the wall, like my life is over. What am I gonna do?
Yeah.
And
For anybody
you
that's
know,
listening, whether you're driving or whatever, just like if you felt that way with your first kid, even if you were trying, just go ahead and raise your hand. Like, what am I going to do?
yeah,
Sorry.
for sure. He was a surprise, maybe not to her, but he was definitely a surprise to me. And I'd love to tell you that, from that day on, I cleaned it up, but I didn't. And I continued to party a bit and oh, nice place.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
then it wasn't until he was born. I remember it was after he was born and he was laying in his bassinet sleeping. I'd come home high and I
Mm,
went and looked at him and I just overwhelming guilt came over me. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I full turkey quit that day for the next day. And uh, decided that I needed to get serious and, be the kind of man to support my family that my family needed. And I took a job as a garbage man and I picked up garbage literally. Because I decided,
mm,
I can't go to school right now, and I wasn't really into it anyway. So I got a job as a garbage man, and I picked up trash for the next 7 years, and throughout my 20s, basically, and
wow.
supported my family. And a few years later, my daughter came along, and it was always a struggle. I mean, we were never comfortable financially; it was always a struggle,
Hmm.
and I just from that day that I came home and looked at my son in the bassinet and just felt the overwhelming guilt for who I was, I just decided it was time to turn it around, and that was really a turning point for me.
Mm. You've got this like on your Zoom. So we're on Zoom. If everybody's listening, you have a superhero caricature of yourself.
You
I'm
want
gonna
to see
put
it?
you. Let's see it. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's
There it
killer.
is.
That
Yeah.
might actually be the cover of the podcast, so everyone else can see it. It'll be on the website, guys. So you can go skilledad.com. Go check it out.
Awesome.
Um, just knowing, and I'd love to, we can fast forward here in a minute to where you are now and what you did during that time because you're not a garbage man anymore.
Right.
Um, and and but that caricature, that cartoon, that picture, that's very fitting, man. So I'm just really impressed by you and appreciative of you, and I think you are a good role model for many people. So
Well, thank you.
no,
Appreciate
thank
that.
you. Um, so fast forward, you got married, you brought in 3 little ones into the family
Yep.
and, started wrestling, and so where are you now? So you've got adult children,
Mhm.
and what is that like to where you raise these kids, and now you're to the point where the kids aren't there anymore, you're still dad, you're still bonus dad, but life looks very different.
Mhm.
Give me a sneak peek behind the curtain of what I have to maybe look forward to, although, like I said, I'm in no hurry.
There's an adjustment period as your kids get older. So now at the age your kids are now,
Mhm,
you're the dad, you're the authority. Like, whatever mom and dad say, that's the law. And
mhm,
you don't like it, there's different parenting styles. I don't know what yours is specifically, but when the kids were younger, it was like that's the way it is, tough. And with some kids, some of them like would be fine, and others, my wife's middle child especially, uh, really needed an explanation. Like,
mhm,
just because I said so was never going to work for her. And so, but if you laid out the logic for her, she she'd understand and she'd be okay. And that's really the approach that we took through their teenage years, but for my kids and for my wife's. And it's an adjustment into their teens. And I'll tell you now, having, you know, raised two and mostly raised three more, having a good hand in the raising of the next three,
mhm,
is that every one of them is different. They all
mm,
have the same rules, the same parenting, the same everything, and every one of them is so unique. So personally, I feel like the parent's job is just to keep the kids on the rails. Now, people might disagree with me. I feel like we're going to become who we're going to become.
mhm,
And if we can just help keep them on the rails from veering too far off into like a self-destructive direction, that
mhm,
they'll become who they're going to become. And every one of them is different. So To answer your question, the change really started in their teenage years and allowing more like less authoritarian type parenting and
Mm,
more like collaborative parenting
mm,
and starting to like give them allowances, age appropriate allowances, for time, for being away, for when they needed to check in, for, how late that they could stay out, for, whether they could have a cell phone and all that sort of stuff.
mhm,
And then transitioning the next step again in as they become adults, 18 plus, and that relationship changes again. And I've always tried to adapt
mhm,
age appropriately because, when they're even though the 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 youngest, Natalie Grace, she just moved out last summer and she was 20 at the time when she moved out. And so she was living here when she was still 20 years old.
mhm,
And, you know, it's sort of a weird dynamic having the adult kid in the house, but the rules at that point were basically, hey, just let us know where you are. You don't have
mhm.
to like let us know like whether you're going to be home or not. Not necessarily where you are specifically, but if you're not coming home tonight, let us know so we're not worried. So it
Sure.
was just that sort of thing. And so I just always tried to adjust age appropriately and they become, now it's more like friendship than parents. These
Mhm.
are young people that I love dearly and that I respect as people as well, and I enjoy as friends too. So it's definitely a different dynamic.
Yeah, I would imagine, especially when they can take you and pin you on the floor at the age of, 15.
I think
But
all of them could now.
yeah. Well, and to your point on personalities, um, I had mentioned my young one is the warrior. My 9-year-old is he's completely logic based. If it's logical and you can explain it, he's
Yep.
usually in. And I reserve the right to change my opinion as soon as they hit their teens. But in my middle one, my daughter is a future CEO of something. I don't
Yeah.
know what it is, but that's her jam.
That's awesome.
But all the personalities are different, and so in our household, it definitely is a boundaries based style that we have. I mean, it's if you know where your boundaries are, don't cross them, and we're
Yeah.
gonna be good. Um,
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of helicopters going on in our house.
Yeah.
We want them to learn from their mistakes. We wanna make sure that they're not gonna hurt themselves in the
Yeah.
process. But as they adapt, and get older, is it fair to say that we also are adapting as we get older,
Absolutely.
right? So they're
Absolutely.
changing and so
Yeah.
are we.
You have to. And I don't think everybody does. I
Mhm.
think that a lot of parents don't adapt and they end up having a more challenging relationship with their kids as they grow into adults.
Yeah. I've heard it. I don't know for sure yet, but yes, I have heard that, and, I'm sure, you've got relationships where you've seen that too. So you mentioned, you work with parents in the health coaching side. Let's pivot a little bit to the health side because as we get into, you know so I know this about 60% of my audience is between the age of 35 and 44. Statistics are weird and so is the digital age, right? So I can see that, and there's a lot of us that aren't, in the chapter of the head that you are. So I want to make sure that I'm in a place that at 15 I at least put up a good fight.
Yeah.
And when he's 15, not me, I am beyond 15, regardless
Right.
of what I look like
I
when I
got you.
shave. But when we get to that point, the health piece is key, and we can't control everything. Things happen in health,
Yeah.
but there are things that we can influence and we can control.
Yes.
So, in working with parents, like what are some of the things that you've seen, um, and what are some of the things that that you have learned that you would promote in order for us to sustain ourselves in a way that is the most healthy, to be able to combat 15-year-olds, but also just to be there for them, in the
Yeah.
best way that we can be.
Yeah. Well, first, let me just say the dad bod is not inevitable. It doesn't have to be a thing.
That's why the screen is cut off right in my chest. I'm just gonna be honest with you.
It the thing about being a parent, especially if you have multiple kids, is that you pour so much of your life and your time into your family.
Hmm.
So most of the parents that I've worked with have been people who work full time, and then they have young kids that they need to tend to. Some of them are single parents, so that compounds it even more in terms
Hmm.
of the time because there's just one parent who's like having to get them to and from recreational activities and pack their lunches and cook dinner every night and help them with their homework and all those things. And
Hmm.
it can be very easy when you're pouring so much of yourself, I mean, rightly so, into your kids. They definitely deserve the time and attention. But the biggest thing I see is that they forget about taking care of themselves, the parents,
Hmm.
that is, and not making time for themselves. And it's the whole thing like whenever you fly and they say, the cabin loses air pressure and the oxygen mask drops. If you're traveling with somebody, do your own mask first before you help them. It's the same thing here is that if you're just taking care of somebody else over time, all the time, your own health is going to suffer in this example.
Yeah.
And not just your physical health, but your mental and emotional health. So in the coaching that I do, I mean, the first thing we start out with is getting into what their life looks like. What are the stressors, and start to focus on what are the things that are within their control and what are the things that are outside of their control. Now, you
Hmm.
may not be able to control, when your child gets sick, or having to run them around, or whatever it is, or
Hmm.
when something happens in life, or you have to work overtime, or whatever it is. There's all these things that are demands on your time and your energy. But what can you control? You can control your mental space. You can control your thoughts. If you learn how to, you can control what you put in your mouth. You can control whether or not you're exercising. And so most of the time, there definitely are parents who literally have no time, and I feel for them. But living a healthy lifestyle doesn't mean that you have to spend, you know, 8 hours a week prepping food or shopping, and an hour a day in the gym. It doesn't. It's little stuff. So it's
Hmm.
really about finding balance, and that's what I work with my clients to do. We identify the stressors, what they're what those stress inducing things, what the effect is on themselves.
Hmm.
So oftentimes we have an energetic stress response. And so oftentimes when we're given bad news, we start think, oh, here we go again. It's happening
Hmm.
again. Every time I start doing well, something happens. I started working out again, and now I pulled my hammy, and now I can't go to the gym. So I may as well go back to eating pizza and donuts, because what the heck, it just never works out. So getting into that victim mindset is like the biggest thing I see, where
Hmm.
everybody thinks like everything's out of their control, and then sort of addressing it from there,
Hmm.
because your thoughts lead to your feelings lead to your actions, and your actions or inaction in that regard leads to your results. And so identifying the stressors, understanding what's within your control, starting to make changes where you can, and it all starts with their thoughts. So it's about changing thought patterns. It's about thinking like, I don't have any time. Well, let's do a time on it. Let's really see how
Hmm.
much screen time does your phone say that you had today, you know? And what we find is that feels like I don't have time for myself. When we're in reality, I can squeeze 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there. I can take the stairs. I can choose to eat salad instead of a donut, an apple instead of a pastry, whatever it is. There's choices that you can make, and it's about making small incremental changes and finding a balance in your life, and not thinking that you have to wholesale change everything. Otherwise, you're a failure.
Hmm.
So how is that for a long winded answer?
That's a great answer. There's so many follow-up questions. No. No, it is great, and that's helpful to kind of paint the picture of what you're seeing and how you're addressing it. And so somebody might be hearing it thinking, okay, yeah, that could fall into something that I've experienced or I'm doing. But I love the concept. I love the concept of don't eat the elephant one bite. Don't eat the elephant all at once. Eat it one bite at a time.
Yeah.
And then also controlling the controllables. Specific, 'cause I was thinking it in my brain, and then you said doing the time audit, and, I was thinking doing time inventory, but there was a time in my life where I had the opportunity to work with a great organization, and, it was around finances, and when someone's talking about, "I don't have money," um, now in some cases, I mean, especially right now, people can be stretched, right? There are
Yep.
circumstances that could lead to it, either choices that we made previously, either way. But when you really focus on making a budget, you are then forced to look at your spending habits.
Yep.
And money is not equal all around, but time is.
Yes.
And so taking that hard look at that inventory of your daily, like, hey, what I do today?
Yes.
So I would love to hear kind of how you walk somebody through that. But in my mind, if you do that without judging yourself for like 4 or 5 days, doing an inventory, just you're just noting it. You're just observing yourself,
Yes.
which is hard to do. So talk to somebody like Jeff, and that way you can have some accountability. Um, but but do that, and then step back and look at it and see what you find.
Yes.
So like, what process do you use that someone could maybe say, okay, I want to give this a crack because what Jeff said really hit home with me. I do want to be better. I do want to wrestle my kids when I'm older. I want to throw the ball with them. I just need to be healthy. And then the last part do want to go back to in a minute, not now, but in a minute is us, the importance. I mean, this is all about being healthy as parents, but even kind of the other me things that when we sacrifice time and money and all those things for our kids, if we're not there, then no one's in the fight with them. So anyway,
Yeah.
uh, I'm also long-winded at times, but so what process do you use to kind of walk somebody through that audit?
Super simple. Super simple. I challenge them to record their time throughout the day. You really only need to do one day, maybe two. If somebody can do it for a whole week, that would be fantastic. I've never had anybody need to do it that long. After one, maybe 2 days, they get like, okay, I see where I can steal some time out here. But in 15-minute increments, account for your whole day in 15-minute increments. From the time you get up to the time you go to bed, or literally till the time you fall asleep, as much as you can, record what you're doing. Now, ideally, in the moment, just take a pen and a piece of paper and just like 8 to 8:15, I was taking a shower, then I was getting dressed, then I was driving to work, then I was scrolling on my phone while I was, waiting for a meeting to start or something. Yeah. And then looking at the screen time on your phone and what the time is by app, because most phones will show you like where are you spending your time on
Mm,
your phone, and start to scrutinize that a little bit, because people think that they don't have time, but when they actually do this time audit, if they're really honest about it, they'll find that there are places in their day where they can squeeze thing out. They might not be able to like go to the gym, but I'll tell you right now, it is almost impossible to outwork a bad diet.
mm,
So where I always have them start in making changes is in their diet, not in the gym. So you can lose weight without exercise. If that's what your goal is, to lose weight, it is actually not very difficult to lose weight without exercising. Now, exercising certainly helps, and there's a whole lot of other benefits to exercise. But talking about weight loss specifically, it's not that vital, especially early on. It's the diet. And
mm,
so people, it's the all or nothing mindset that really holds most people back. They're like, well, unless I can go to the gym 5 days a week and eat only broccoli and chicken breasts, then it's not worth it.
mhm,
That's like, it's not true. It's a lie we tell ourselves. I
mhm,
say, you know what? You, you don't have time to go to the gym. You're not, you're sedentary right now. What can you do? Can you take the stairs to work? Can you do one push up? One push up. All right. Let's what I challenge them to do is just make it so simple. If you're starting from zero, what's one thing you can do? And what's the minimum that you can do? And then, we get into minimums, maximums, and happy mediums, but I
Mhm.
really like them to start with baby steps like while you're brewing your coffee in the morning, can you do some standing squats? Can you get down on the floor and do some push-ups? One push-up, just one. One jump, five jumping jacks. Can you do five jumping jacks? I bet if you do five, you're going to do 10. I bet if you do 10, you're going to do 20.
Yeah.
Over time, it will go. Then the next day, maybe you do one more. And the next day, you do one more. So it's building incrementally instead of thinking that I have to make these wholesale changes in my life. So
Mhm.
that's for the activity, but that's usually not where I have people do that more as to show them that they can take a baby step. But again, I usually have them start with changes in their diet. And if
Mhm.
weight loss is the key, if you're feeling overweight, uncomfortable in your body, lacking energy, lacking focus, your macros are probably out of whack. And so that's something that we address in getting their macros in line. But even then, it's baby steps. If you drink 5 sodas a week, maybe try four this week. If you eat fast food twice a week, maybe go for one time this week. Maybe try some fresh vegetables if you're not much of a vegetable eater. Just try some things and introduce them slowly. And
Mhm.
that's really where I have people start. You
So
asked me
the
about time audit, and I went into food and exercise.
No, I love it. For those that don't know, I happen to know because, this is definitely my wife's arena, but what is a macro?
Oh, yeah, macronutrients. So think of them as carbohydrates, protein, and fats,
There
the
you go.
major macronutrient ingredients. And most of us in America, we overeat on carbs, specifically,
Mhm.
overeat on saturated fats, and we undereat on protein. And so
Mhm.
when you start to bring those in line, usually I have them start by reducing their carbohydrate in. So, breads, sure, anything with sugar in it. Uh, if you have a bowl of cereal for breakfast, even oatmeal, that's a carb. So these
Mhm.
are things that it's not that carbs are bad. I'll never tell anybody that anything is bad for them
Mhm.
necessarily. It's just that there's some things that we want to eat more of and we want to eat less of. And if you find yourself in a place where you gained weight over time, you're the likely culprit for most of my clients that I've worked with has been they're overeating on carbs. And so when you just start to dial that back a little bit,
Mhm.
then you start to see some results right away.
Mhm. Or over drinking on carbs, can play a factor in
Over
there too.
drinking, yes,
I
absolutely.
mean,
Yes.
and I'm not just talking about, bread in a can, so to speak, Cokes or sodas, any of those things. Those are I just stay
Yeah.
away from them because those are immediate, especially in the
Abs-
as I'm getting older, I find that, you don't tolerate it the same and, you know,
yeah.
pants are
Yeah.
expensive.
There's
Um,
nothing good in that can of soda for you,
Not for
and
you, but sometimes the taste is there, Jeff. I mean, sometimes you're like, "Okay."
you know what? There's other ways to get that flavor too. You could a nice alternative is like a seltzer water, a flavored seltzer water, especially if it's flavored with stevia as opposed to an artificial sweetener.
Mhm,
Or you could, if you don't like the taste of water, like I drink water all day long. I prefer to eat my calories, not drink them, and so I always like water and coffee is about all I drink. A cup of coffee in the morning and then water. Once in a while, I'll have a seltzer and I'll put a little spritz of like a stevia sweetener in it if I want something sweet.
mhm,
But you know, aspartame and uh, the other artificial sweeteners that are in sodas, even if you're doing a diet soda, are
mhm,
no better for you than a
mhm.
sugar or corn syrup.
Yeah, there's byproducts of those that are not great, as well. Um, no, I love that you're going from, "If we're at 0, let's get to 1,"
Yes.
because then you're gonna realize a win and then be motivated to wanna keep going, and,
Yes.
guys, you can do 1 push-up.
Yes, one push up, one stinking push up, and if you can't do a push up, one jumping jack. Come on, one something. Just start somewhere, and yeah,
Yeah.
you'll start to build wins. Like you said, you'll build momentum over time, and you'll want to keep doing it.
Yeah. Build confidence, build energy. And guys, if you're in my boat and you got kids under 10 and multiples, energy is nice. So most we can get, bring it on. So don't be a blocker for yourself. And water. Water is one of those key factors that, I mean, you probably know more statistics on this than I, but the um the amount of people that run around dehydrated because we drink the
Yes.
coffee and that dehydrates us, other things, and we're not drinking enough water. And for me, I will tell you, I can tell when I haven't had enough, and then when I get the amount that I need, which typically is half your body weight in ounces. Is that accurate?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Uh,
So if you weigh 200 pounds, try and get 100 ounces of water in you a day.
yeah. And so some of you might be thinking like, what? That's a
Yeah.
lot. You can do it.
And if you're starting from, hardly drinking any water at all, again, start slowly. Go for 8 ounces today. Go for 16 ounces tomorrow. Build slowly over time.
Yeah. Do you put salt in your water?
Uh, Not salt specifically. There's a cool like electrolyte thing. It's called 40,000 volts that my wife turned me on to, and it's just like a little teaspoon spray into it. It's got electrolytes in it, and it doesn't taste bad. It's not sweet, but it doesn't taste bad. It's not
Okay.
salty on it.
I'll do, it's like a mineral salt and
Uh-huh,
lemon in the morning and just
uh-huh.
chug a couple of 8-ounce glasses of that, and
Yep.
usually that's a good way to get you going, and you're
And
flushing
that's
out
a
some
good
of that
point.
stuff.
First thing when you wake up in the morning, down a glass of water. Two, ideally.
Mhm.
It's an easy way. You've been asleep. You haven't drank anything for ideally 8 hours. If you're getting a good night's sleep, get some water in your body right away. And you'll find that, you know, as you start drinking more water, it gets easier to drink water. And you'll start to crave it. And I can tell you now, if you're not peeing at least every hour and a half or so, you're not drinking enough water.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. If you're not drinking enough water and then you start to drink a lot of water, plan your day, to be close to a restroom because the body's gonna be like, "Hey, here we go."
But
No,
that's good. That also gets you moving too. So get you up from your desk if you have a desk job, and it gets you off your butt and get your body moving again.
we're gonna have a lot of guys shuffling around after this. This is great.
I hope so.
Uh, I hope so. No, that's important. Didn't anticipate to hit that one, but it's just the easy stuff. So if you find yourself in a I like your word sedentary place because we're tired, we're running around, we're doing all this, we're working, you know, um, late nights or whatever it might be, do some time auditing and then look at some of your nutrition too. And if it's like energy you lack, there's some things that we might be able to do to get you going, and that's all skill set. Like, this skilled dad is about building skills that help us. It is about helping the family, but it is skilled dad is really based on how we can equip ourselves with the information and the things that we
Yeah,
can go and do so that we can go and equip the next generation for success.
yeah.
And to the point that you said earlier, I love the airplane analogy because I was just on an airplane with my kids and we were flying to Phoenix and they were so excited, with the airplane. Um, and I used to fly a lot. I was doing the math with my son, and over a 7.5 year period, it was like over 650 flights. So that was my
Wow.
commuter. And so they're pumped, and I'm like, let's rock and roll. But my eldest was listening to, the pregame show, about the masks and the seatbelts and all that stuff. He's like, "What are the masks for? Why do the masks drop?" That whole thing. And I love that analogy because we're there to take care of them, but then we have to put our oxygen mask on so that we can still be there if we need to assist with something else. And so
Absolutely. Yeah. I
I
mean,
love that. Yes.
whether you realize it or not, they're watching you, and they're following in your footsteps unconsciously, perhaps. But the example you set, you know, if you seem stressed out all the time, then guess what? You're sending them unconsciously a message that being an adult is stressful, and that's
Mhm.
just the way it is, you know.
Mhm.
And but if you're taking time to take care of yourself and feed yourself well and feed your kids well, and these are skills that they're going to pick up on and incorporate in their life as they get older,
I love that.
hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. More is caught than taught, as many say.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I have to go clean my room after this. Thanks for reminding me. So as we wrap up, what are with all your experiences that you've had, we, um, and you can take it from anywhere, but if you've got a dad listening tonight, what are 3 things that you would say, um, that you would bestow upon him to kinda listen? We've had a lot of good discussion, but, like, what are some 3 key takeaways that you would say to them before we kinda end this episode?
Approach this from a couple of angles. So
Yeah.
first, take care of you. Like, your kids deserve it. Your family deserves to have you around for a really long time and in a healthy condition so that you're able to enjoy life with your kids and your grandkids. So please take care of you first. Whatever that looks like, wherever you are, wherever you're starting. Like we said, maybe it's starting with one push up or one jumping jack, or maybe it's just cutting out one soda, whatever it is. Some early wins and build some momentum.
Mm,
So say one, take care of you first. Two, divorce is tough. And so if there's any dads out there who are listening to this, or moms for that matter, who are in that place and are going through a divorce, it feels like the end of the world, and it feels like, you know, you're you're losing your family and your kids and all that. But your relationship with your kids is probably going to change, but it can be a good change. It can be a
mhm,
positive change because if you are in that place where you're getting a divorce, there's probably a lot of stress in the family, and after the divorce, hopefully that is less so, and your kids can actually flourish, and you can build a strong relationship with them. So, like,
mhm,
I know it's tough, but do what you can, everything you can to be there for your kids, be support for your kids, and know that you're going to get through to the other side of it. And I guess the
mhm.
last thing I'll say is that enjoy the ride. I mean, kids are fun at every age, like every age, from newborns, to when they start crawling and walking and talking, and they get sassy and they're getting in trouble at school all the time. Oh my gosh, we didn't even talk about that. My son got in so much trouble at school. My daughter too, but not as bad as my son. And it's frustrating as heck, but at the same time, it's really rewarding. So, like, enjoy every minute of every bit of the journey, and the relationship. Hopefully, you can adapt as your kids get older, age appropriate changes in the relationship. And if you do, you're going to find that you're going to have a strong relationship. I believe I have a strong relationship with all five of our kids.
Mhm.
And, the oldest is now 33 and married. And the youngest, as we said, is turning 21 in a couple of weeks. And I think that they would all say the same, that we all have a strong relationship with each other because I've just worked really hard at trying to be conscious of treating them with respect as individuals, as young adults, as adults, and, you know, just really giving them the room to become who they're going to become, and not
Mhm,
trying to
mhm,
stifle them with too many rules. But everybody's parenting style is different. So I guess all I'm saying is enjoy the ride, and enjoy the changes in each stage of parenting.
mhm. Enjoy the ride, baby. I love that. It is a ride, um,
It's a
but
wacky ride
it's a
sometimes,
it's a
but
wild ride.
it's a,
But, the one of the key reasons we do this podcast, and I say we because I have some people that help me in the back end, so I don't just have a mouse in my pocket when I say we, but, the reason we do the podcast is enjoy the ride and hopefully learning and hearing from Jeff and just how authentic he is and his story, and we all have stories, and we can't put it all into a 52-minute episode. Um, and even the context around all the different pieces, ups and the downs, the wins and the losses. Enjoy the ride, but know that you're not the only one on this parenting ride. And there are other guys that we can learn from, like Jeff and others that are on here. And if you meet another dad, just talking about the trip we just took, I've now I'm just that nerdy, awkward guy. When I see somebody doing something awesome, I'll just go and tell them. And I've got these skilled dad stickers, and I had a really cool experience at the airport. Newer dad, had a baby. Wife was not at the table. It was like at a food court in Austin. And hey, if you're listening, dude, you rocked it. But I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, man, you're doing a great job." And he just like looked at me at first. He's like, "Who the heck are you?" But then he was like, "Thanks, man."
Yeah.
You know,
That's powerful.
and sometimes we don't get a lot of accolades, and it's not like we need
No.
somebody to pat us on the back. But man, if you see somebody doing something awesome, celebrate it. Because this is a ride that we're all on together, and enjoy it. But when you have people around you that have been there that you can learn from and that you can talk to about it, that's key because that's where we're going to learn. So I appreciate you taking all the time and sharing some of your story with us, and skills that we can build and tips that you've learned. Where can people find you?
All over the place. I'm most
Mm.
active on Facebook.
Okay.
I'm sure you can link it. I believe it's Jeff Spitzer 1970 on Facebook. Instagram, I'm less active, but you can find me there too. JeffSpitzer.h3h. I think I am there. LinkedIn, uh, yeah, link up with me. If somebody, you can like, or you could friend me. I'll accept your friend request and would love to know other people's stories. If this impacted anybody and if they got anything out of this, I'd love to hear it. So yeah, please get in touch.
Yeah, I will definitely let you know. I do get to hear from people about when they've listened to an episode and they hear something that somebody said and it just stuck with them and it helped them. And I love that. That's why we like to share these stories because I don't know where everybody's at, but I do know that we all are living life. And so um I'll put everything in the show notes and on the website. And guys, if you didn't know this, you can go to the website and it has the full transcript of everything. If you happen to want to read this, you could listen to it. Key takeaways, but then also links to where you can find, Jeff and make it easy to connect on LinkedIn, or on Facebook, anything like that. But Jeff, once again, sir, I really appreciate the time, and man, I've just enjoyed getting to know you. So thanks for coming on here with me.
Yeah, we got to do this again because we only covered a little bit of ground. I feel like we could talk all night. But it's getting late for you, so I won't make you do that.
Oh no, it's fine. We're just getting started. This is when all the kids are in bed. This is when I get work done. But
Awesome. Thank you, Zach.
so part 1 of 7. It's been fun.
Seven
So
part series.
that's it. Thanks again, Jeff. Well,
Absolutely.
guys, if you've listened to this point, I really appreciate you hanging on, and I hope and know that you probably had some takeaways that you can take and apply to your life. Go do that time inventory, do that time audit. Um, I'm going to set the table with it's probably not going to feel great if when you do it. It's just one of those things. It's like if I think you should have a budget for your money and have a budget for your time, but you got to do the hard work to see what we're actually doing versus what we think we're doing. And then from that, we can realize there is change in the ether. There's change in what we can do, but we have to understand what that is before we take the change. So I really enjoyed hearing that process and would challenge you to go do that. Go do a push up or jumping jack or some fake curls, whatever. Just get yourself started. You can do that. Um, but if you heard something in Jeff's story and what he shared that made you think of a friend or someone else, please share it with them. Um, that's one of the key things we can do. Not only is an opportunity for them to maybe take something away from it, but it also shows that you care about them and that you thought of them, and that alone has power. So Again, we appreciate you being on here. This is always a blast. If you have interest in sharing some of your story, you can reach out to me, Zach at skilleddad.com. You can go through our website, let me know, and I'll get back to you. But in the meantime, I hope that you can enjoy the ride on your journey to becoming the skilled dad. We'll see you next time.